Hey there, it is Kyle Boone, aka Strong Jaw, staff writer at CBS Sports. Welcome to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast YouTube channel. I'm joined by 247 Sports' Adam Finklestein today, and the draft, Adam Finklestein, is a day away. I'm so excited for this. We have been building up to this for months and months and months and months. We've been scouting all these prospects. We've had an ongoing series breaking down each position, kind of ranking each prospect within their position. Today, with a day until the draft, we're going to go a little bit off the board, and we're going to talk strictly about the best fit for each prospect. And we're just going to go down the rankings of our top 5 in the latest CBS Sports Top 100 rankings, which, by the way, you can check on cbssports.com. That just released yesterday. It's a consensus ranking that includes rankings from myself, Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, Adam Finklestein, Travis Branham, and Colin Ward-Henninger. So go check that out if you have not already. We are just going to go down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got my best fits written down. Fink has his best fits written down.
I've got some hot takes.
You've got some hot takes. We're going to dive right in. And I am so glad because I already know that you're going to disagree with this. The best fit, number 1 prospect on our board, Chet Holmgren. I have him as the best fit with the Orlando Magic at number 1. And let me state
they don't have
first.
him as the best fit.
Yeah. Well, do we trust the Magic? I mean, there's a reason they're picking number 1, right? This is a guy who has played next to Jalen Suggs, who the Magic drafted last year. They both played at Minnehaha Academy. They were really, really good high school teammates together. I think this is a guy who could play next to Wendell Carter in the front court. He's a center, but I feel like he just has kind of a helper's skill set where he can play on the wing, like he can play a guard. Like there's so many different areas that he can play on the court. Now, obviously on defense, I want this guy playing center just because of his shot blocking ability, his ability to affect shots around the rim. But I really like his ability to fit into what Orlando has right now. I don't think Chet goes number 1 in the 2022 NBA draft, but I kind of want him to go number 1 because I think this would be the best scenario, both for Orlando and for Chet Holmgren.
So what's ironic to me about this is Chet is not number 1 on your board, right?
That's right.
Where do you have him?
Number 2.
All right. So I've got him at 1. I think he's the best prospect in this draft. I do not think Orlando's going to take him at 1 because I think they are concerned about fit. I think he's going to go number 2 to OKC. And I think that's where he's the best fit. I think this will work out really well for him. And according to all the reports, he's kind of already, pretty happy about the fact that he could end up in OKC because OKC is a program that is in rebuilding mode. There's not going to be the immediate pressure of, hey, we got to make the playoffs right now. You need to win MVP right now. They are committed to the long term. They also already have their building blocks on the perimeter with Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Lugansdort as well to potentially a lesser extent. But Chet really has an opportunity to step in there, be the focal point of their front court future. They've already got their guards. The other thing about their guards are already established as their primary playmakers. So Shai's going to be the guy who creates. And what we've seen from Chet is he's not yet the guy who's ready to step in as a primary offensive playmaker or creator. So I think OKC would be a really good fit for him if he ends up there.
You're speaking my love language. I think that's actually probably what I think will happen on draft night, Chet to Oklahoma City. And I think it'd be a great fit. We'll see on draft night. The odds for the number 1 pick have been doing some weird things over the last couple of days. Paolo Banchero has been getting some late buzz. Jabari Smith's still the favorite to go number 1. I'd still believe that he'll go number 1. Chet is still the favorite to go number 2. Paolo Banchero to go number 3. That's what I believe, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we think that those are the best fits for each of those prospects. So we'll go to number 2 here. Jabari Smith is number 2 in our top 100. I'll let you state the case for who you think is the best fit. I have a good guess here.
I'm going to pose a question first. And because everybody, the group think that is NBA draft analysis is that Jabari is a terrific fit in Orlando. And my question is, can he and Wagner, like, is there any concern whatsoever about those guys coexisting and defending the 3 and the 4? Like, I feel like that should at least be a conversation. And it hasn't been, at least publicly, since they got, the number 1 pick. Nobody's saying, like, gee, which of those guys defends the 3? And I know Jabari is ultra versatile defensively, but I just feel like we are, we're making that assumption a little too quickly that those 2 guys can coexist. And at the same time, we're saying, well, Chet can't fit next to Wendell. So, to me, there's just been, it's been a little bit of an inconsistency there. So Jabari, who I think Jabari fits best with? The Houston Rockets. Because you've already got Jalen Green. We know they have the need at the 4 spot. Jalen is not known for his defense. Neither is Paolo. Jabari, on the other hand, goes to a place where he can bring a defensive mentality and form that tandem with Jalen Green. Right now, the assumption is it's going to be Paolo and Jalen Green. I would argue that Jabari and Jalen is a better fit because Jabari brings that defensive versatility versus Paolo, who is also not a great defender. And we've seen that play out numerous times over the course of NBA history. When you're building around 2 young players and neither one of them guards, it's not a great long-term foundation. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I would really like Jabari in Houston.
That's exactly what I wrote down too. Jabari in Houston. I can't imagine a world in which he falls to number 3. I think even if Jabari does not go number 1, assuming Chet would go number 1 in that scenario, OKC would just pick Jabari Smith. So either way, he's going to be off the board by number 3 when the Houston Rockets are picking. That being said, like, the fit would be fantastic.
Yeah.
The Rockets just traded Christian Wood, their starting power forward. Jabari Smith could immediately step in, and he's definitely a different player than Christian Wood, but I think maybe would add more value for what they're doing right now. He's an elite shooter at his size. Shot 42% from 3 last season. At 6'7", like, his shooting ability, his ability to kind of create on offense as just a catch and shoot weapon, I think would be very valuable. Add him next to Jalen Green, and suddenly I think you really have something. You get Banchero next to Jalen Green. I still really like that fit. But if I'm handpicking like one of the big 3 in this draft, I think for Houston, Jabari Smith would be the guy. And hey, we're talking about like the guy who is probably going to go number 1. So, this isn't, breaking new ground or anything, but I really would love to fit Jabari in Houston. Number 3, Paolo Banchero is number 3 on our latest big board. My pick that I had for perfect fit would be the Indiana Pacers. And this is this franchise that's rebuilding a little bit. They just hired Rick Carlisle. They're trying to kind of mold themselves into something new and different. They traded for Tyrese Halliburton, traded away Domantas Sabonis, and I think they could add this guy to be a starting power forward. Now, the Pacers are not in Paolo Banchero range at this point. This is obviously like a dream scenario. But in a vacuum, Tyrese Halliburton and Paolo Banchero would be really dynamic 1-2 punch with the Pacers. Would love that fit.
I also like the fit next to Miles Turner, kind of the floor spacing 5-man. It allows Paolo to kind of play that mid post in area. And I agree, though. I'm not sure it's short of them maybe, taking one of their perimeter assets and trying to move up. I'm not sure if, 6 and Chris Duarte gets you up to 3. Probably not. But, I agree with you. I like the fit. I'm going to play off something you said earlier, and that's the fact that the Vegas line is changing. I think of the teams picking in the first 3, Paolo's the best fit in Orlando. So to me, I could see like a Boston Celtics type scenario where, hey, we know Markelle Fultz is going to go number 1. We really like Jason Tatum, so we're just going to trade down, grab another asset, and then still get the guy we want. If I'm Orlando, maybe that's something I contemplate if Houston would have an interest in moving up, because I think, the thing with Paolo, again, I have fit concerns with Jabari in Orlando. I know nobody else does, and that sounds contrarian because everybody's just assuming he's going to be a great fit there. And on the surface, you're saying, wait a minute, how's Paolo going to play next to Wendell Carter? And it might not be ideal, but long-term, I do believe that Paolo is going to be a serviceable NBA center. And serviceable NBA floor spacer. And I think he's going to be able to play some small ball 5 at that center spot. I was getting ahead of myself a little bit. So you're looking at a scenario where, and remember, you got Mo Bamba as a free agent there too. And Paolo next to Mo Bamba, like that works because Mo's stretching the floor now. He's protecting the rim. So that 4-5 combo works. I think that Paolo next to Wagner, as you know, maybe they're playing small ball. And if Paolo can come up and step into that small ball 5 role, he would be that much more effective. It's going to be really interesting to see if Banchero can become even a little bit of a rim protector, because if he can be a small ball 5, he becomes like a playmaking 5, and that's really, really interesting. Or even if you can kind of put him at that spot and find like a versatile weak side rim protector at the 4 spot. So I think there's, I'm playing draft day trade maker, but to me, that would be a pretty intriguing fit, Paolo to the Magic.
Yeah, I would love that as well. Jonathan Gavoni from ESPN had said something on a podcast about how he thinks that Chet, Jabari Smith, and Paolo Banchero would all be really good fits on the same team. That is such an interesting thought experiment that like has me shook since I heard that. I don't know how that would work exactly, but I think that's kind of the case for each of them as the number 1 prospect.
I think there was probably a USA Basketball like 16 and under team at one point where that was a reality or something. But yeah.
And they all bring something different to the table. That's what's so interesting. Is Chad's just an elite shot blocker, defensive player, especially in the post. Jabari, a great spot up shooter, can shoot the 3, but also can defend multiple positions. And then Paolo is just like an amazing mid-range scorer, can do a little bit of everything, has a ton of offensive polish. Like they would all play really well off of each other. I think determining the number 1 pick, we think that Jabari Smith is going to go number 1, but it comes down, I think, to kind of like which flavor do you prefer? Yeah. And so like if you're picking a top 3 or even in the top 4, because I'm a Jaden Ivey stan, I don't feel like there's necessarily a wrong answer. These are all like really good prospects. This is a really top-heavy draft, but I also think there's a lot of depth. And
history is likely to show that there was a wrong answer. Somebody's going to take James Wiseman. Right. Somebody's going to take Josh Jackson. Somebody's, and you're going to go, and somebody's job is going to be on the line because of this pick 3 years from now. So on the surface, I agree with you. I don't know who that person is going to be. But if history is any indication, somebody's not gonna pan out.
Okay, then I agree with you. Who is it then? Because I would bet that it's Jabari Smith out of this draft class.
Yeah, the top 3, I think Paolo actually has the highest floor. So I think Chet has the highest ceiling. I think Paolo has the highest floor, and so that means like if they all become the best version of themselves, Chet would be the best. If they all kind of become the worst version of themselves outside of any totally unpredictable variables, then Paolo is the best version of the 3. By that logic, I would probably agree. Admittedly, I don't think Jabari is going to be a bust, but I think I've shared this in a previous episode. Like the Rashard Lewis comp really scares me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Jabari Smith will be a fine NBA player, maybe even an all-star. But I think there's a world in which, maybe he's just another guy. Like he's just a really good shooter who maybe doesn't develop some of the areas of his game that we project that he will. I certainly would not bet on that. I think that his polish on offense, his defensive versatility, all of that's going to translate. Have him as a top 4 prospect in this class for a reason. So really excited about his draft future and where he goes on draft night. Okay, number 4 prospect in our final top 100 rankings, Jaden Ivey. This made me sad that there are so many people that are low on Jaden Ivey that he slipped from number 1 to number 4. But this could be a blessing in disguise because my favorite fit, and I think it's actually possible, is the Detroit Pistons, who are picking at number 5. They just drafted Cade Cunningham last year. I think Ivey could add a dimension as like a real positive initiator off of Cade Cunningham. His athleticism, his burst is like a total change of pace of what Cade Cunningham is, who's like more of a smooth. He'll get to his spots, but he's not necessarily going to blow by you. Ivey's like he could be like the lightning to Cade Cunningham's thunder. So
I like that.
I believe in
Make the
Jaden
t-shirts
Ivey.
now. That's a good one.
Yeah, I love it. As
I do
someone
too.
who was high on Cade Cunningham last year, like I think the pairing would be really interesting. I think the big question is like, do the Kings pass on Jaden Ivey at number 4? Because I think pretty clearly
They didn't even work him out.
Yeah,
Like,
but yeah, I don't know. What do you do? I mean, like the Kings have in the past, like kind of relied on maybe roster fit and construction over best player. Like this is a franchise that literally passed on Luka Doncic and drafted Marvin Bagley. So
I forgot him on my bust list. That was a good one. Yeah.
yeah, so it's tough. I think they ultimately either just select Jaden Ivey, the Kings do, or they trade out and someone trades in and they're just a believer in Jaden Ivey and select him number 4. Either way, I can't imagine Jaden Ivey falls out of the top 4. That being said, like if Keegan Murray ends up going number 4, Ivey at number 5 to the Pistons would just be fantastic.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Detroit's a perfect fit. Everything that Cade Cunningham is, Jaden Ivey isn't. You know, like Jaden plays at an electric tempo with electric burst. Cade is he's a solid athlete, but he picks his spots. He dictates tempo. He doesn't get sped up. You know, similarly or conversely, Ivey is a guy who, you know, you don't necessarily want him to have the burden of being a primary creator right away because he's not ready for it. And with Cade, as you said, he'll be a secondary guy, and that really speaks to what he can do best. So that is a perfect fit. Couldn't agree with you more. About Sacramento, here's my thing. I get that it's not a good fit with Ivey there. You just moved off Tyrese Halliburton. He's a future all-star, and you traded him away because you didn't like that 3-guard rotation with De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell. So I get it. But here's my thought. This is a poker game. You're playing poker and you just showed everybody your hand because you didn't even bring him in to work out. So if you're contemplating moving this pick, or if let's say like Detroit was looking at this on the night of the lottery and this was like an epic fail because it was perceived as a 4-player draft, they get the 5th pick. And that was the pick that no one wanted. And now nothing has changed except for the fact that Sacramento has basically just told you that, hey, one of those 4 guys is going to be available. So you don't have to attempt to move up. Don't even worry about it. So I just don't understand the decision-making process to not work him out. It just doesn't make much sense to me.
Okay, so number 5 on our latest and final CBS Sports Top 100 rankings, Keegan Murray, who has a chance, I think, to go number 4 on draft night. There's some rumors, some rumblings that maybe the Kings like him at number 4. I think that would be a mistake, but yeah, there's a chance that he goes number 4. I think my favorite fit for Keegan Murray. I've never seen Finklestein laugh. Like I feel like I just need to get like just a little tap on the back. New Orleans would be an interesting fit to me. I can't imagine that he slips this far, but this is a Pelicans team.
God, you are hating on Keegan Murray right now.
Absolutely. He's very polished. This is a New Orleans franchise that was in the playoffs this year. Like the only team picking in the lottery that was in the playoffs. Keegan Murray to me feels like the most NBA ready among all like top 10 prospects. I don't have him as a top 5 prospect, so I'm kind of a hater in that sense. I really do like Keegan Murray's NBA prospects, though. Like, can play inside out. This is a guy who had 50 dunks and 53s last season, so his versatility inside and out is obviously on full display. He averaged like 23.5 points per game for Iowa. Really good defender. I'm not sure that I would take him over. Like a Dyson Daniels or even like an AJ Griffin. Yeah. Just because I think some of those guys maybe have a little bit higher ceiling. That being said, like Keegan Murray's floor is like just through the roof. Like the ceiling is the roof, as MJ would say. So I really like his NBA prospects. Again, can't imagine he slips
just getting ready
to the Pelicans, but Finklestein, you think he should go number 1 overall to the Magic, don't you?
No, I think yeah, take him. I think that I don't love the Sacramento fit, ironically. I think where he would be really good is Indiana. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think it's unlikely he slips that far. I don't think he's going to be available when the Pelicans pick. But I think that at Indiana, the reason I like that fit is because Keegan is, to me, someone who did a lot of his scoring in the post. And we alluded to it before, but Miles Turner is a floor spacing 5, and with him emptying the block, Keegan can kind of do what he does best. I really do buy into his shooting, but I think just to pigeonhole him as like a stretch 4, he's not like a change in direction guy off the dribble. So I think for him to be fully utilized offensively, he's got to be allowed to play inside and out, and that by extension requires him to be next to a 5-man who can also be inside and out and empty the post. So you have that fit with Turner. I also think that Tyrese Halliburton, like anybody's going to fit with Tyrese Halliburton. So, playing with a high IQ player like that, that's the other thing about Keegan. Phenomenal hands, phenomenal IQ, great feel for the game. And like the character is all there as well. You're not going to find anybody who says a bad thing about Keegan Murray short of he's a little quiet. And the one thing, in all seriousness, that I'm going to push back on a little bit, because I think that you said something that a lot of people are saying right now, and that's that Murray has a lower upside than some of the other prospects being named around the top 5 in the draft. I actually asked him about this at the NBA Combine because, like, I get it. He doesn't have a flashy game. He's not like, he's not dunking on people. He's not flexing. He's not doing any of that. But if you go back, everybody talks about the jump he made from his freshman to his sophomore year in college. And that's 100%. But if you're only looking at that, you're not seeing that like he's made that jump at every step. So This is a guy who had one Division I scholarship offer as a senior in high school. He went to prep school and he became a high major player. He made a huge step. Even at that, he was like, all right, he wasn't a top 100 kid. He goes to a very good Iowa team that was perceived as a national contender, and he earns minutes right off the bat. He made another huge step. And then there's the step between his freshman and his sophomore years in college. So to me, he's the one who has the most established history of improving at a rapid rate each and every year along the way. And so it's just ironic to me that so many people are questioning his upside, because it suggests that, like, okay, his rate of improvement is about to plateau. And I just don't think we've seen any signs of that just yet, although I get it because he is certainly the least flashy of the guys who are in contention, not just in the top 4 or 5, but even in like the top 7 or 8.
No, totally. Yeah. And I think honestly, it comes down to the flashy word, like you mentioned. Like, he's not a guy who's necessarily going to be creating. He doesn't play on the wing. Which, right now, like after what we saw in the NBA Finals, like everyone wants to know who's going to be the next wing, who makes a difference, on the defensive end and can play both ways as a playmaker, as a passer. That's why I'm high on Dyson Daniels. This may be some recency bias playing in as well. Keegan Murray, having played 2 years in college, is older, so maybe like his upside may be perceived as lower, but I think that's like a very honest and respectable pushback, because I think it's real. Like, just
you're my favorite person to disagree with.
Yeah, but and it's true though, because I am guilty of this, and just like projecting that for whatever reason that has stuck with Keegan Murray in particular. That he has a great high ceiling, but maybe doesn't have an all-star potential, and that honestly just may not be true. Like, even going back to his freshman season at Iowa, he didn't put up huge numbers, but like the analytics behind what he was doing as a freshman, there was people like in the NBA draft community like, keep an eye on this guy next year. He can be a difference maker. And yeah, Luka Garza's the guy, but like Keegan Murray might actually be that dude, and Keegan Murray is actually that dude. So. Like clearly a top 10 prospect. To me, when I say it's a mistake that the Kings would take him at number 4, that's more of like a fit thing. But also, like, I would prefer to take a few other players above him than Keegan Murray. But I got no problem. If you have him as a top 5 prospect in this class, like, I think that's very reasonable given his production profile, his developmental trajectory. Like, it's just off the charts, and what he's been able to do the last few years. Kind of molding himself from like a guy who's totally off the radar to being clearly like a top 10 prospect in this class is really impressive.
And on that note, let me go on the record. Make sure we clip this. Get ready. Keep an eye on his brother next year, because I think it's very possible he's next.
Yeah, very interesting. And that was someone who tested the NBA draft, right, and decided he wanted to come back. It sounded like it was maybe 50-50, but I think that could be a huge decision for him coming back. He'll be a focal point for Iowa and could be on the NBA draft radar next year. Okay, let's do one final best fit for a best team. We did our top 5. Now you can pick anyone in the entire NBA draft. So you want to pick Kofi Cockburn to the New York Knicks.
Which one of us is going to take the low-hanging fruit and say the center to the Michael Jordans there? Is that you or is that me? Who's gonna do that?
I figured Nada would just do that for us.
Yeah, right. I mean, who is Lonzo Ball going to throw his lobs to? So, I'm actually gonna. I'll leave that one for you. I'm going with my guy Jeremy Sohan, and I think although it's high, I think he'd be a really good fit with the Spurs. If you look at, international player. Spurs loves international players, obviously. Super high basketball IQ. Again, that's what the Spurs are known to covet. If you look at where they've allocated a lot of their young assets, it's in the perimeter. They've got a lot of talent back there to develop. They have 3 first round. Or do they still have 3 picks, or did they move one of them?
I think so. They have. I believe it's 3 still.
I think they still have 3. So they're gonna take a 4, at least one of them, because that's the spot where they really don't have like an obvious young asset, unless you're talking about Keldon Johnson. And I think he's a wing. So to me, having a high IQ, ultra versatile defender, because that really is like at the top of his list of assets, that just fits San Antonio so well. So now, is he good enough that they're going to pull the trigger on him inside of the top 10? That remains to be seen, but I think they might, quite frankly.
Yeah, I like that. I was kind of hoping, you said Jeremy Sohan. I was hoping it would be to Oklahoma City at number 12, but not entirely sure he's going to be on the board at 12.
Yeah, and if they take Jabari, then all of a sudden that's, and again, Jabari's supposed to go number 1, but
yeah,
I think this is the other interesting thing to me. I think the Jabari Chet thing is going to have a ripple effect on where you see other centers taken, because if for some reason it flips and then they don't need to draft a center, all of a sudden you could see Mark Williams and Jalen Duren start to slip even more. So that to me is going to be a very interesting kind of subtle storyline to watch on draft night, is where Chet goes and how that impacts the other teams who are looking for 5 men, because there's not a lot of them.
Yep. No, totally agree. My best fit, this is the last one we'll do here. Dyson Daniels, kid out of the G League Ignite, who has really been rising over the last few months, had a really strong season with the G League Ignite. I think his best fit would be with the New Orleans Pelicans. And we've talked a little bit about the Pelicans already.
With Keegan Murray?
Yeah, and Keegan Murray too. There's a lot of really quality options that I think the Pelicans could add. To me, Dyson Daniels would be kind of the one that I would hand select, just in a vacuum, depending on obviously how the lottery would shake out. But reminds me so much of Lonzo Ball, like his length, his unselfish play as a passer and kind of as a playmaker. I think all of that translates to him being just a really good selfless connector type of piece who can be a quality playmaker next to Zion Williamson. I think the 3-point shot is like the only question mark that I have about him potentially being just like a plug and play guy. He was around like 25% with the G League Ignite. It's not great, but I don't think the shot's broken kind of from what I've seen. I think he's got pretty good touch on floaters. He's a guy who can kind of get into the lane and create a little bit. And so we'll see. Dyson Daniels to me is a guy who could go like anywhere from 5 to 12 maybe on draft night. But the Pelicans to me would be kind of the fit that I would really like.
All right, I need a quick mulligan, because I said Lonzo Ball and I meant LaMelo when we were talking about Charlotte. So whether it's Jalen Duren or Mark Williams, that's obviously the fit. They are a team that needs a 5. LaMelo needs somebody to throw lobs to. So that's the low hanging fruit in the fit conversation.
Who are you taking, by the way? If you're Charlotte and you're taking a big, Jalen Duren and Mark Williams are both there. Who are you taking?
Mark Williams, but I know that's he's number 2 on my board. But I know he's behind Jalen Duren on most boards. But I'm a believer in Mark Williams.
No, I think it's totally reasonable. I think honestly, maybe if you're the Charlotte Hornets and you have 13 and 15 and you actually keep those picks, maybe go with a wing at 13 and then come back. And if Jalen Duren and Mark Williams are there, you take whichever one you prefer. Or
if they're both on the board, I could see that. If one of them's already gone and you're just kind of playing chicken, that they're still going to be there at 15, that's when I'd like, all right, because they're one of the few teams that really does need a 5-man. A lot of these teams, I mean, that's why I think one of those two guys could fall, because the modern day, the 5-man in the modern day NBA is less important than ever. And there's just so few teams that I think are really going to be willing to allocate a high pick for it. That in Charlotte is really perceived to be maybe the only one that people are targeting and saying they need a 5-man in this year's draft.
Yeah, and this is too, like, those are two quality assets in the NBA draft, 13 and 15 picks. Yeah. Charlotte feels like a franchise that is kind of in flux right now. They've got some pieces that maybe they could move to be active in the trade market. So be something to keep an eye on. There's a lot of teams with multiple first-round picks in this draft. OKC, the Spurs, who we mentioned, the Hornets. Wouldn't be surprised if any or all of those are active on draft night. I'm hoping for some fireworks, Finklestein. I'm hoping that we get some late changes, because I love when the first-round order changes, we get some shakeups in the final hour.
Would anybody be happier if Jaden Ivey went number 1 than Kyle Boone?
No, I would be so happy just thinking about
what's
that.
the hypothetical trade that needs to go down for that? I mean, we need like somebody to move up, right? I mean, that's
here's the scenario where it happens. Sam Presti, long quiet on the trade front and on the draft front, decides Jaden Ivey is my guy. I'm going up. I'm taking him at number 1. I'm making sure that the Orlando Magic do not get him. They go and get their guy, and they sacrifice, I don't know, like the 12th pick and Lou Dort or something.
I mean, we're deep in the world of hypothetical here, but here's the thing. He drafted Hamidou Diallo. He drafted Jalen Lecque. Sam Presti is a guy who bets on those highest level athletes. And yeah, I mean, it's not, I guarantee you he's intrigued by him as a prospect. I'm not sure that he's picking him at 2, but I guarantee you that he is, if his draft history is any indication, he is intrigued by Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Thunder is, like, they got the 12th pick, they got the 34th pick. They've got a lot of, like, pretty good players on pretty good contracts. Like, there's some buzz that they may be very intrigued by Jaden Ivey. Now, how much of this is smoke? How much is this just noise? Like, who knows? Something to keep an eye on.
The flip side of that is nobody's more notorious for, like, the smoke screens than OKC too. So
that's right.
That's what everybody's trying to figure out.
That's right. Yep. So very curious. We will learn all of what is true and what is not on draft night here in 24 hours, less than 24 hours. So very excited. That is all we have for today's show. This will be the last of our YouTube series, I believe, before Thursday's draft. So be sure, we'll have more content throughout the offseason. We'll have reactions to the NBA draft, including from Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander. So be sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Be sure you're subscribed to the Ion College Basketball podcast channel on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple. That's where you get all the latest shows delivered directly to your feed. We will see you guys probably tomorrow with a reaction show from GP and Norlander. Until then, take care.